Hello, welcome to Superpower Broadcasting. Tonight is debate night. Tonight I'm joined with Kaiser Kenny here. We're going to be debating on American intervention. Welcome to everybody in the audience and welcome to Kaiser. Thank you for coming on. How's it going? And feel free to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kaiser Kenny. You guys can hear me, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I haven't used this before. I'm Kaiser Kenny. I don't have a YouTube. Well, I do, but there's no videos on it. And then, I have a Twitter, so just find me there.
Okay. So you wanted to debate about U.S.-led intervention. And so how these debates go is that because you're the challenger, you get to start. So if you want to make your case, feel free to, up to a few minutes, make your opening statements, and then we can get into the debate.
Okay, fantastic. So I am the United States, since like the 1890s, has been involved in so many different, I can bring up so many different examples of the United States intervening in other countries only for the benefit of the United States. So, I mean, is that what we're debating here? You don't think that's happened?
Well, there's a difference between doing something that's in your benefit and doing something to hurt others. And so, an example of this would be, let's say you've got a neurosurgeon, and the neurosurgeon manages to treat a severe case of, say, some sort of brain damage or other sort of physical ailment affecting the brain.
Okay.
And the person that goes on afterwards, well, they might have some issues later on. They get to survive. They get to go about their life. The surgeon did a good job. But then I tell you, hey, look, the surgeon, he's a good guy. He likes to help people. But let's keep it real. He's pretty motivated because he wanted a Lamborghini. He gets a Lamborghini. Are we pissed? Are we mad? No? Two people are both better off.
I completely disagree with that analogy. That's ridiculous to think that the United States overthrowing a democratically elected leader in another country's brain surgery for that country. That's a ridiculous notion. I mean,
name a country. Name a country.
Okay. Venezuela.
Venezuela. Democratic.
Not only was the leader elected democratically, but we also prop up a new leader in our not Maduro, but the other guy in our own country during our State of the Union address. So we're actively saying that they have another leader that is not elected. We're saying that this guy is the president of Venezuela. There's no election.
Hold on. So I know back in the day, people would try to make the case that the predecessor to Maduro, Hugo Chavez, that he was a democratic leader, because he calls himself a democratic socialist, right? That he was democratically elected, and they'll have all these polls to back him up with popular support. They'll have, Venezuelan state TV to back him up with popular support and everything. And the thing is, we could definitely have a debate over whether he's an elected leader or a dictator, but it's surprising to see people make the case for Maduro. Maduro's in many ways more clear cut. A blatantly corrupt dictator. There are so many millions of people that have fled Venezuela. Upwards of 6 million people have been displaced as a result of his handling of the situation, and they don't have the democratic venue to express their discontent. So they have to either starve there and live under the socialist regime, or they get out, and many have decided to get out. And so when you say prop up the alternative, you're talking about Juan Guaido. And Correct. The thing about him is that he was legitimately selected
he was
basically
not.
As a result of Maduro.
How was he selected?
So Maduro has basically forfeited his power, right? So Maduro is a dictator. Maduro is somebody who.
Okay, so wait. So let's say the president of the U.S. steps down. Another country can't just then say, okay, well then here's their new leader. There's a chain of command. Okay, that's not how it works.
I didn't say he stepped down. I said he forfeited his legitimacy as a result.
How did he forfeit his legitimacy? Is that a formal term that they use in Venezuela? Is that did he draft up a document and say that?
So the thing is, what you're basically ignoring here is that they basically had a crisis in Venezuela, and and the thing is that Basically, Guaido was selected by their
No,
assembly.
but you're not under. Why did they have a crisis? Why did they have a crisis? Because they nationalized their oil industry, and we didn't want that because then we don't get that chunk of profits. So that's why we have all these sanctions on them. That's why they're having a crisis now, and that's why in the past and now they're having a crisis. So it's ridiculous to like kick somebody in the knee and then say they're down and then say, all right, well, now let's go help them. That's utter insanity.
So that's very conspiratorial, but there are a
That's
couple
not
different.
conspiratorial. We have sanctions on Venezuela.
Well, yeah, we should have sanctions just as you should on Cuba. No, the thing about Maduro is that Maduro refuses to abide by free and fair elections. He's somebody who refuses to step down. And in the wake of his refusal to play by the democratic norms, the National Assembly recognized Guaido as the legitimate leader. Guaido is recognized not just by the United States government, he's recognized by dozens of countries as a legitimate leader there. You mentioned, oh, well, what did Maduro ever do? I mean,
no, he's recognized by Western countries.
Yeah, so the only countries whose opinions actually matter. I don't care.
Oh, okay. So there you said it. Why do Western countries' opinions only matter?
Because they're democratically elected, so their governments are actually representative of people, as opposed to oligarchs and despots that either gasp or torture or starve their people to beat them into submission. They don't have legitimate standing when it comes to who am I going to look for legitimacy. I'm not going to go and see, oh, what does North Korea think? Oh, they recognize Maduro. I guess that's the same as if America recognizes Guaido, right? That's stupid. That's dumb. That's dumb. I mean, so I got a question for you, right?
Okay.
Would you say that if the Venezuelan people just wanted Maduro out, that they had any means of doing so that would actually work within the current framework under Maduro? Or would they literally have to do a revolution at this point or have foreign intervention? Because to me,
I would say we probably kicked them out of any kind of place where they could go, like to the United Nations and have that grievance heard. So, no, yeah, they probably would.
Wait, the UN is a joke. The UN doesn't do anything. The only time the UN ever did anything serious was in 1950.
I know you don't like the UN.
Yeah, well, no, they did one good thing. They did the Korean War, but that was because the Russians boycotted them. They're never going to boycott the UN again, and they support Maduro. So you can understand how these international bodies are compromised by the forces of darkness, right? That impinge upon the democratic world, the free world.
No, what are the forces of darkness? What are you talking
about? Fascist Russia, communist China, North Korea, Islamic fascist Iran.
Okay, those are different countries.
Yeah, those are different. They're all part of the UN, and actually, a couple of those, Russia and China, they have permanent veto status at the Security Council. So if the Security Council were to vote to basically have a resolution calling on military intervention in Venezuela, you know, at least one of those two, but probably both, are going to veto it. So it's not going to happen. So the UN is not a serious body to go to resolve the humanitarian situation that's unfolded in Venezuela. So I got a question for you.
Of course it's not a solution for you, because then we can't go in there and use their resources for us. That's why you wouldn't want the United Nations to do that, because then we would have to leave at some point. The United States has never liked working with United Nations contingencies, because then we have to leave or hand it over to a different person. We always want control. We want to play world police. It's not our right.
Based. Oh, no, you're right. It's like, oh, well, it's either going to be the US or China or Russia. Those are your three. You got to pick one. You're not going to have the world with no police. That's not how it works. You have a power vacuum if the US steps down. You don't think Russia or China are going to fill that void? But let's get back to what we were talking about, though, which was about Venezuela. And so I guess my question for you then is, well, you mentioned a few things. You mentioned the resources. And I guess my question here, I don't agree with your premise that the U.S. is only concerned about the humanitarian situation on the ground because of a desire to get resources. Now, I would say it's a better argument than the case about Iraq, where Saddam was literally willing to trade oil for cheap. That argument that, oh, it was about oil makes no sense, because if it was, they just keep Saddam in power. But in Venezuela, you say, okay, they got the largest proven oil reserves in the world. And so you say, well, there's a prize there. Maybe there's an ulterior motive. I can see why people might think that. I guess my question would be, let's say you're right. let's say that U.S. intervention in Venezuela would solely be motivated by it being able to extract the oil that's there. You could understand it. My friend, my co-host of Ghoul Gang Rising, we do a show every week on foreign policy. He makes the same point as I, which is that even if it were just about resources, the Venezuelan people would still be better off because right now they're not able to extract their oil because the government's incompetent. The government is a joke.
No, I agree that the government is incompetent. I just don't agree that it's our right to go change it. I think that it's all their responsibility, man.
So you could have been born there. You acknowledge you had a chance of being born there. Millions of people
Obviously,
were.
yeah, I could have been born anywhere.
So why do you lack any sort of empathy for common human beings? Why do you only care about, I guess, white Americans, right? Is that it?
Well, that's a kind of a ridiculous jump. I don't just care about white
Not really.
Americans.
You don't care about the fate of mostly brown countries. You only seem to care about the United States, which is mostly white.
No, I care about their right to self-determination under their own government. I don't think the United States has a right to go infringe on other governments just because, somebody's bad. Guess what? There's a lot of bad people in America too.
Okay.
How about we fix those issues?
So this is basically your referent group, the group whose interests you see as legitimate. You see the referent group that you're talking about. Oh, there's self-determination. You're talking about Maduro and his cronies. The problem is the legitimate government over there is.
No, I'm talking about the actual people. If the people want Maduro gone, I would support their right to that.
By their own National Assembly, they recognize Juan Guaido. So why shouldn't the United States help the Venezuelan people uphold their own self-determination, just as the Syrian people uphold their own self-determination and actually overthrow the yoke of their oppressors? Why can't we do that? Why can't we have world solidarity for once? Aren't you a socialist?
So you claim to care about humanitarian. Do you think it's just going to be, we're just going to go in there and overthrow? It's like, you don't think people are going to die in a war where we overthrow another government?
Oh, people die in war, but it's a temporary thing. People are dying right now. People are starving to death over there, and that's going to continue for years or decades at this rate. So let's get over with. Let's get over with it. It's like, it's kind of like saying, chemotherapy and you maybe cure cancer, or you die of cancer. Which would you prefer? It's not to say that chemo is going to be great, but that's what we're talking about. War is a surgery, and the outcome of it can be to save a life, right? So.
Okay, well, I think we can move on from that.
Well,
I mean, I'm willing to admit that that Maduro is definitely not the greatest guy, and I want the Venezuelan people to be able to pick their leader. So if it is Juan Guaido that they actually want, I want an election for that, though.
But the problem is
I don't just want a guy to step down and then us just be, okay, well, now this is the president.
Well, the problem with that is Maduro's not going anywhere. He's not going to step down of his own volition. You actually have to bring about regime change, because right now the Venezuelan people are being starved. I'm saying
we don't have the. They're
being starved into submission. How do you expect basically starving peasants?
Okay, that's a horrible argument. There's people in America starving. Why don't you care about them?
People in America starving?
Yes. Absolutely.
You can deal with that. You can get a job in America. You can get a job. So you can get a job in America and you can better your own life without requiring a different country. And without requiring a different country to step in on your behalf. The Venezuelan people, even Venezuelan adults, literally can't feed themselves right now. They either have to leave the country or risk literally dying because they unfortunately don't have the ability to just get a job and better themselves like in the United States. So in the United States, for example, let's say, I don't know, you're having trouble paying, I don't know, some sort of bill or something. Well, you can just work more hours and pay it off. Whereas in Venezuela, you literally can't even get food. They don't have food in many areas, and they have a substantial lack of it because it all goes to the cronies of Maduro, because they've so poorly, and it's not just him, Chavez bears a lot of this responsibility too for screwing up the economy, and creating so much debt. But it basically rests upon the leaders over there, and they have no interest in taking care of their people. And so what my question, I guess, for you is, this is kind of the same thing as saying you've got a house across the street, and you like 100% know that the parents over there are beating the crap out of their kids, and they're actually starving their kids, and the kids are like emaciated at school and everything, and these parents are
okay. This doesn't work because guess what? Our own house has starving people in it.
It does work. It does work. Let me finish.
care about that house when
let
our
me
kids are
finish.
starving in our
Let
house.
me finish the analogy. So you
It's
call
a
child
shitty
protective.
analogy.
So you call child protective services, and they actually bring in the police as reinforcements over there. But you know what the police chief says? The police chief says, actually, that's their house. Men's house is his castle. That's his sovereignty, bro. Our sovereignty is in the police station. We aren't going to leave the police station because of sovereignty, bro.
No,
That's
because
the
both
argument you're
houses are
making
built
right now.
in the same jurisdiction. You know that
No,
when
but
you
you're
build
making
the
a false
goddamn
equivalence.
house.
You're making a false equivalence.
No, I'm not.
No, you're making a false equivalence. You don't understand. Upwards of 94%. Last I checked, 94% of Venezuelans were food insecure. 70% plus were actually on the verge of starvation. Only about 1 out of 20 people in that country that's fairly connected with the government is in any way comparable to American society, where you've got food each day. You are talking about basically comparing a developed country where even the worst off are better than the average in most countries out in the world. And you're comparing that to Venezuela, a country where 94% of people are food insecure. What percent are food insecure in the United States? It's negligible. And even then, we're using a different absolute threshold. Even what you would say as like homeless, a homeless person in America eats better than the top 20% to the top 4% eat in Venezuela, for example. So, roughly speaking. So, even if you're in the upper class in Venezuela, your food access is comparable to an American homeless person. But yet you're like, oh, well, there's starving people in both countries. Bullshit. Make your case. Make your case.
Wait, there's starving kids in America. Absolutely. Can we just look up the statistics on childhood hunger?
Well, no. But my point is that what's considered starving in America, what's considered food insecure in America, is a different standard than in Venezuela. So
How
even
is it a different? It's not having food.
No. But that's not a thing.
It doesn't matter how you don't have the food. No, it doesn't matter how you don't have the food.
There are no kids in America that don't have food. That's like a Michael Moore talking point where you use people in America where it's like what classifies as no food. It's like how you can be poor in America by America's poverty line, and that would be rich in Venezuela. It's the same thing as far as food goes. There's a different floor in both countries. The floor in America is way higher than the floor in Venezuela. Now, sure, you might say, well, there are a couple. Look, I'm not saying America's perfect, by the way, but you're actually going to have to present some evidence right now because I know
some evidence of childhood hunger. Okay.
Yeah, but you're gonna have to see what the threshold is, what they consider to be food insecurity, and compare that to Venezuela. Because in Venezuela, we're talking about absolute food insecurity. We're not talking about, oh, you only have 2,000 calories a day, or you only have 1,500 calories a day, whereas the average American might have 3,000. We're talking like you're food insecure in Venezuela. So my point is, you're a world superpower. You have the capacity to intervene, and you're saying don't because there are problems here. I got a question for you. You lean left.
No, I'm saying that's not what I'm saying. Don't. I'm saying don't because it's not our right.
No. But that's dumb. That's dumb. But like,
okay, it's dumb. But that's our disagreement.
We'll come back. We can come back to that. I got a question for you. If you were like one of these libertarians that I debated, where they're like, no, it's not our business. You can't tax me to pay for intervention. Look, I think they're dumb. I think they're crazy. I think they're like social Darwinists and stuff, and they're insane and solipsistic. But at least if you're a libertarian, I get why they're against raising taxes or doing anything to pay for wars. But you're a socialist. Why not just raise taxes to feed people in America and then also do an intervention to help people in Venezuela? You're not against raising taxes.
Because I fundamentally don't believe we have the right to intervene in the other country.
Oh, so basically you wouldn't have a right to intervene in that house because a man's house is his castle. That's basically the same thing. Why? It's just arbitrary borders. Humanity is humanity, whether you're in America.
Okay, well, it's okay. You can do a lot of things if you just start thinking everything's arbitrary.
No. You think Americans are better than Venezuelans? Why? Why don't they have equal dignity? Why?
No, I don't. If anything, I don't want our government to intervene in their affairs.
So you want their absolutely corrupt menace of a dictator to interfere in their right to even survive?
And that's not what I said. I said I don't want the United States to interfere in Venezuelans' affairs.
Okay, but Venezuelans' affairs now consist of clamoring for food or getting the hell out of the country because the regime is so terrible.
Okay, and then I would lift those sanctions because that's a thing we're doing to them, and I would move on and allow them to repair that themselves. It's not our business.
So the reason why the sanctions are on is because of the barbarity of the regime. So, and yes, do sanctions hurt the people at the bottom? Yes. By the way, I'm not actually in support of sanctions. I want to be very clear here.
Well,
I've
that's
said
good. We
since the
agree on that.
get-go that sanctions always gave lawmakers in Congress this feeling of self-accomplishment. It's like, let's say you play a video game, you play World of Warcraft 12 hours a day,
I
and then
don't agree for that reason.
your mom asks you at the end of the day, like, hey, you get anything done today? You clean your room, and you're like, oh, I hit level 76 in World of Warcraft. And she's like, oh, so you did nothing. It's like, no, I felt good. I felt accomplished. That's what sanctions do, because they make people feel like they're doing something when all that they're doing is coming up with an excuse to not go to war and solve the problem once and for all. So.
Okay.
You got a follow up to that?
And could you repeat it? I was actually just reading the chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, bit of advice, word of advice.
Sorry, I just discovered I could read the comments.
Yeah, no, I got you. Word of advice for future debates and stuff. This is what I do too. Best advice I ever got about debating was some Spooky Nookies who you see is in the chat. And he said, never read the chat. So that's my advice to you. Just don't read the chat. You can always read the chat later on if you got the time. Because it can get distracting and everything. That's like I don't care personally. You can do what you want, but
well, I was kind of figuring out how to turn you down a little bit just because I'm using headphones now.
Okay.
I normally use speakers. I put on the headphones for the debate.
Okay. Yeah. No, I was just making the point.
I saw the comments.
Yeah. So I was just making the point. I was just
not trying to ignore you. I'm trying.
Okay.
My bad.
So I was just making the point that like basically sanctions are the same as if you're some kid playing World of Warcraft for 12 hours a day, and your mom comes in and asks you at the end of the day, you know, Johnny, you clean your room, you get anything done today? And Johnny's like, oh yeah, I hit level 76 in World of Warcraft, and feels all proud and stuff. And his mom's like, oh, so you did nothing. See, that's the thing. It's a false accomplishment. You didn't actually like improve your life or anything, unless you're getting paid to stream. That's a little bit different. But
well, no, but they're not designed to improve your life.
That sanctions are the World of Warcraft or whatever video game or drugs to policymakers. They basically give Congress this idea that they're doing something, that they've accomplished something, when all they're doing is basically coming up with an excuse to not have to do what actually has to get done and clean their room and go to war and actually clean up the problem once and for all, so we never have to deal with Maduro again, and the Venezuelan people can have their own country where they have prosperity in their own hands. So if you actually cared about Venezuelan self-determination, you might ask, why are a huge percentage of the country leaving right now emaciated? What happened to their self-determination? Oh, but we only care about the self-determination of their dictator. That's a dumb reference group. Why not have the people as your reference group? Why have the leader as your reference? Why have the state as your reference group? Fuck the Venezuelan state. I care about the Venezuelan people.
I mostly just care about like the jurisdiction of what we should and shouldn't be able to do. So I
arbitrary borders. Arbitrary borders. That's dumb. They're just lines.
Yeah, they exist.
No, but they're literally
very important sometimes.
Yeah, so if they do a genocide, if they do a Holocaust within their own borders, I guess it's okay because it was in their borders. Is that it?
No, that's different. That's like a war crime. So.
Oh, but starving your people and everything, that's not a war crime.
No, not if the country that wants to like overthrow the government like sort of had a hand in doing that.
No, I guess you're missing something. Yes, do sanctions hurt the people first and the regime last? Yes, that's why I'm against them. But your argument there is actually an argument for war, because you're arguing that America is helping to make the situation worse. That means that America has a moral responsibility to right a wrong. Just
no,
like
I think I think the only wrong is we have the sanctions.
But that's stupid. So you don't see Maduro's regime. So you don't see Maduro's regime as a wrong. You don't.
No, it's a wrong. I don't think it's my wrong to right.
So Hitler wasn't your wrong to right either, and Saddam.
That's completely different. Hitler was going to take over the entirety of Europe. Venezuela's not taking over South America.
So if Maduro invades Colombia, then you have to go in. But if
is he planning on that? Do you have any evidence that he's planning on doing that?
I'm giving you a hypothetical. So you only have a problem if they go and invade other countries. But if they're an absolute menace and a Hitler in their own country, that's all good because that's their sovereignty, bro. What I'm doing is I'm exposing the moral depravity of you anti-interventionist scum and your Westphalian sovereignty fetishization. It's fucking disgusting, honestly.
No, what's disgusting is wanting to just interfere in every other country. Are you ready to move on to a different country?
Well, I don't want to interfere in every other country. In fact, Venezuela is low on my list.
I think you do. You want to do it with Cuba now too?
Well, no. But there are priorities. So if I was in charge, it'd be Iran and North Korea. and then we can talk about other countries afterwards, like Syria. You can't go to war with the world at once.
So why Iran and why would you group Iran and North Korea? Both are pretty bad countries, I'd agree, but one of them is definitely far less bad.
Wait, I can't tell which is which in your view. I'm guessing you're thinking that. I'm guessing you're thinking that North Korea is worse, right?
Yes, obviously. Sorry, okay. I should have said.
Okay, and I would agree. Yeah,
I want to. Did you think I was a bit of a tanky there for a minute?
Well, you're like a socialist, dude. How am I supposed to know? A ton of you guys.
I'm a sock dim. I want things like I want like a Scandinavian model for the United States.
But you want starvation and basically food insecurity comparable to Germany in the 1940s for the Jewish population in Venezuela. So in other words, prosperity for me, not for thee. That's what you want, right? Because you're relativist.
No, if guess what? If the intervention you want to do in Venezuela is send them food, then let's fucking go ahead.
Well,
but if the intervention you want to do is fly fighter jets over and bomb shit and overthrow a government, then no.
Yeah, no, sending food wouldn't actually do anything because you know what they would do with it? The same thing the North Koreans do. They give about 20% to the people and then pocket the rest for the top 5 or 6%. How about this? How about do a quick intervention, get rid of the government, and then Juan Guaido can be the president of Venezuela, and they can have their own self-determination. I'm not saying take
self-determination.
I'm not saying take over. Figure. I'm not saying make them the 51st state. I'm simply saying help them rid them of the yoke of their oppressors because they can't do it on their own. It's very hard for starving people to overthrow an enriched and fat cat corporate crony government, basically. That's what they got going on right now. So if you're Maduro has all the money. He has all of the military power. He's got all of the, what would you call it? He's got all of the food to distribute to keep the keys of power loyal. What do you do if you're not in the keys of power? How are you supposed to challenge that? And you would say, well, I guess you can't because we're not going to help you. Go fuck yourself. That's what you would say to the oppressed millions in Venezuela, tens of millions of people. I try to get inside the head. Like I hung out and I've written devil's advocacy policy papers and stuff in the past when I was in school. I've hung out with anti-interventionists and everything. I've tried to get inside your guys' head and understand how you guys think. All that I can come to is that you see the referent group there, the self-determination, all that stuff. You basically see the state as the only legitimate actor. Whereas for me, my referent group is the people. I actually don't give a shit about the state.
I specifically said I would be in favor of the people overthrowing that government. No, I don't.
No, you don't. You don't. So if they get butchered,
but I'm not going to
in a civil war that they're probably going to lose because they're starving and he's got the military power, and you know the Russians are going to help him, like they're doing in Syria right now, and they barrel bomb Caracas and kill a ton of kids. You're going to say, let's not intervene. And my guess is people around you and in the media you watch are going to say that America's intervening anyway, like they say about Syria, which is not true. What you're going to say is, oh, no, that's not our business, man. And you're going to stand by as another 500,000
No, you see, you're assuming my positions on
people are butchered in a 10-year war that burns the country to the ground when you could have just done a 2-month invasion like in Iraq and been done with it. And then the people have their own
been done with it. We did not even leave Iraq in 2 months.
Well, no, but the war to take out Saddam only lasted about 2 months.
And then what happened? We had a power vacuum, and then it was a hellhole for such a long time.
No, not really what happened. You had to deal with an insurgency, and my main criticism of
Bush because of the power vacuum.
My main criticism of Bush and Rumsfeld and all those guys that did that war was that they didn't take out Iran in 2003 as well, because Iran was the one that basically funded the insurgency that undermined the nation building effort in Iraq. So you can't, like it's that saying, you can't half-ass two things. You gotta full-ass one thing. If you want to do that war, you actually have to do it full. You gotta go all out, and you actually have to take out Iran. Otherwise, if you only do Iraq, you're basically half-assing it, you know. And that's the problem, is that they didn't take out Iran. They didn't think that Iran would be as big of an influence there as it actually was, and so so that's the problem. So what I gotta say is that basically this whole thing about borders and sovereignty and statehood and everything, is there any way that you could conceive of an illegitimate state that you wouldn't recognize without them literally invading countries like Hitler did?
Yeah, sure.
So how does a state lose their sovereignty where you could justify intervention in your view?
Probably like gassing their own civilians, like what Syria did. I think the U.S. intervention in Syria was somewhat justified. So that's what I was saying earlier when you were assuming my position on that.
Okay, but do you think the U.S. should actually overthrow Assad? Because the U.S. presence there has been like negligible. It's been barely anything for years.
Sure.
So you would support intervention against Assad, and why Assad but not Maduro?
Specifically the chemical weapons.
Okay,
proven to have been used in multiple areas.
So let's say,
because that would then give us the right. Then that makes it an international thing that we can then go do.
That's I always find the
and also the thing about it is that that's also a thing that we can solve with actual military power. We can destroy a chemical weapons facility with a jet. You can't fix starvation with a jet and that's going to take way too long. Even in the meantime, it would still make sense for us to send food.
I didn't suggest a jet. I want boots on the ground in Venezuela.
Boots
I want boots on the ground in Syria. So you
I don't want boots on the ground. They'll never leave. They'll never leave.
Base. They'll look like Germany and Japan and be rich and have bases there. That's fucking base. Literally.
That's not self-determination, though.
So the Japanese people don't have self-determination right now.
No, they have a state that was set up after our government.
So the Japanese people are horrible and enslaved by American neocolonialism and everything. Then why does Japan look so much fucking better than North Korea, which doesn't have U.S. bases?
They're not. They're fundamentally collapsing because nobody's moving there and they're having a population crisis.
They're one of the richest countries in the history of the world. Even in their so-called decline, even in 30 years, you'll be far better off to be born there than you would even in middle-income countries. Like, they're fucking rich. It's basically like a billionaire CEO that decides he's not going to come into work for a few days. It's like, he can take a break. He can take a break.
Money doesn't mean anything. I care about like the average happiness of all the civilians.
Yeah,
all of that kind
rich.
of stuff.
No. The average GDP.
That doesn't make you happy.
No, I'm talking about the median. I'm not just saying like, oh, there's a few billionaires and everybody else is poor. Japan's actually fucking loaded. Like across the board, an average family there is fucking rich.
Yeah, they're loaded. Yeah, because we set up our government like them, and then we.
So you're saying that America.
Yes, but I don't think it's bad. I think it's bad that we have.
You're admitting it. You're admitting that American intervention makes the people on the ground rich. That America doesn't just go there to slaughter people and enslave them and take their resources. Then why does Japan look so base? Why does Germany look so base?
But also, Japan attacked us, though. That's completely different.
Well,
we had a war different because they attacked us.
But then basically it's unfortunate for the Venezuelan people because the only way that they could get that same opportunity at a fair shot in life is if their regime attacked America. Then you could justify helping them. That's lame.
Or a neighboring country or something. I don't think it's our right.
Okay, but let's say Maduro doesn't attack anybody and he just acts as a menace to his own people. Then you're fine with it. You're not going to do anything.
I would be more in support of a neighboring country doing a regime change there than I would us, because our interests in the region have never been honest. It's never just been because we actually care about it. You look at places like Guatemala, where our influence is directly affecting the people there and making them starve. So if you want to go look at that, why is Guatemala not like that? We have
right now. No, you're gish galloping right now.
No, I'm bringing up another example.
No. Yeah, you're admitting that you're gish galloping. What I wanted to get back to was you mentioned the chemical weapons. So you mentioned that the reason why American intervention would be justified in Syria specifically is because of the use of chemical weapons. So the Syrian regime, and I'm using the most conservative estimates here, has killed between 180 and 200,000 people. That's the low end. And the amount that were killed directly as a result of chemical weapons is a few hundred of that. It's not even 1%. So if he just killed 200,000 people without using weapons of mass destruction, that's okay. But if he kills a few hundred people with chemical weapons, we have to do something. But if he can kill 1 million people with guns, that's cool. I find that grotesque.
It's specifically the violence.
No, I think the only reason, now correct me if I'm wrong, I think the only reason why you would justify it based on the chemical weapons and ignore the 200,000 and say that that's not justification is because international law prohibiting use of chemical weapons. Is that it? Because international law is degenerate. So
it's not degenerate.
It is. It literally says you're totally fine if you just butcher a ton of people with conventional arms, but the second you pull out chemical weapons, ooh, now we got to do something. Okay, so what if he kills 100 billion, like just an example, kills 100 billion people with conventional means, he kills one child with chemical weapons. Now we have to intervene. But the 100 billion that died before, that's okay. That's just that's a legitimate war crime, I guess, right? It's just a legitimate civil war, bro.
There's no such thing as a legitimate war crime.
Well, there is in your view because you want to let what Maduro's doing, and you want to let what's.
No, I don't. I don't. It's not that I don't want. I want to let what's happening happen. I don't think it's our. I don't think we have the responsibility or the right to go in and change it. I would say that
it's not America. Who would it be? It would be China and Russia. They would intervene, and guess whose side they would intervene on behalf of? Do you think they would intervene to keep up and prop up the oppressor, or help the
wrong.
oppressed?
They're all wrong. They're just as bad as we are in that respect.
So that's a false equivalence because we know that when Russia intervenes in, say, for example, in Syria, it's to prop up Assad. It's to barrel bomb civilians. When America has intervened in Syria, it's to fight Assad and help the civilians. So that's a false equivalency. America is on the side of the oppressed. Russia is on the side of the oppressor. And you've already admitted that you would support American intervention. I just find it weird that the only reason why is that Assad used chemical weapons. In other words, if he just killed 200,000 people just normally, you're not going to support doing anything. But if he kills a few hundred chemical weapons, ooh, now we got to intervene. I find you guys, you're international law bros, like liberal internationalists, all this kind of stuff. I find you guys silly, honestly. Like, I mean, I had language before about like
you find it silly because you don't believe in the kind of institutions that are set up to deal with this.
I want to just make the point. I just want to make the point. Like, yeah, it's gross, it's disgusting, all that stuff. But it's also silly. It's also just goofy and lame. You know.
Okay. Any other ones you want to throw in there, my guy? It's goofy. It's silly. It's lame.
It's comical. Because I could go at length about how barbaric the situation is and how that makes it disgusting to do this.
Yes, I can describe so many fucking bad things. It doesn't matter. It's all about your right to do something about it.
But it's also silly because international law is a social construct. We make of it of what we will. We can ignore it if we want to. It doesn't change physics or anything. America could literally invade the world tomorrow, and if America wins, then international law.
No, that would be horrible. Do you honestly believe that would make the world a better place?
No, I'm all that I'm saying. I'm not even advocating for that. All that I'm saying is that
sorry.
Let's say America did it and America won the world.
Okay.
So now international law is whatever America.
The world would be in ruins, though.
Well, no, it wouldn't. Actually, everybody would be pretty rich within 100 years. It'd look like Japan.
No, because the other places would launch their nuclear weapons, and everywhere would be horrible.
Well, the U.S. would win a nuclear war, but
there's nobody wins a nuclear war.
Ask Japan. Ask Japan if that's true. America won.
Because nobody else had nukes pointing at anybody.
Yeah, well,
it's not. We don't have a nuclear monopoly anymore, my guy.
Yeah, well, and that's a problem. That's why I advocate that the U.S. should have invaded the Soviets before they got nukes. But no, America would win a nuclear war with Russia and China. Russia should have outdated and
win a nuclear
war. 300 nukes. No, America would win that. But like, okay, so we're getting a little bit off.
What do you What do you think?
No, hold on.
Can I just ask one question?
Hold on.
I want to know what constitutes winning a nuclear war.
The idea that nobody wins a nuclear war. Before we move on,
nobody does.
No, but that's not true. Here's an example. No. Here's an example. You just got to hear me out on this. Let's say country A has 1,000 nukes. Country B has 1,000 nukes. Country A launches a first strike against country B with submarines that are within minutes off their borders. They manage to hit 80% of country B's nukes before they can even get off the ground. Country B retaliates with 200 nukes. Country A intercepts about 50 of them, and about 50 of them fail. Country B lands 100 of their 1,000 arsenal that's left, lands 100 of those on country A. Country A.
So in this constructed scenario that you came up with, you're correct. Imagine that.
Country A lands 1,000 minus what's intercepted, let's say 850 nukes on country B. Country B has sustained 850 nuclear attack or detonations. Country A has sustained 100. Country A wins. So this
because then the world goes into a nuclear winter and all the crops die and everyone starves.
Nuclear winter's a Russian meme. No. Nuclear winter's a Russian meme. All those fucking models by those scientists, they always assume that the nuclear war happens in the summer. And why is that? So that when the winter rolls around, they can hype up this decrease in global temperature
That's
and say,
ridiculous.
oh,
Do you
look,
have
in the
any
northern
evidence
hemisphere, the
on
temperatures
this?
dropped by this much. It was always overhyped. Why? Because a lot of those scientists back in the 70s were closet or outright communist sympathizers for the Soviet Union, and they were part of the anti-war movement. So they wanted to make it so that America would be less likely to
They
go
didn't
for a
want
strike
us to
against
nuke
America.
people. That's such a horrible thing.
No, but nuclear winter's a meme. Like, it's not real. It's sure, it can be real if you have
It
tens of
doesn't matter the
thousands of
damage to
things.
even if there's no nuclear winter, the
No,
damage to
no,
the environment in major population centers, those people can't live there anymore.
the idea that nobody can win a nuclear war. I just gave you an example where 2,000
Yes, a
years ago.
convoluted example in which you
No,
told
it
me
wasn't
like we have
convoluted.
some
It's how
other plan to do
a
this and
nuclear
that.
war. It's how
You
a
act like they don't
nuclear
have
war.
submarines.
It's how a nuclear war would actually go. The attacker's going to get
You
most
don't
of their
know
shit.
that's
No,
how
no,
a
no,
war
no,
would
no.
go.
I've
You just
studied
know
this
that.
shit. I've studied this shit for a long time. Nuclear war favors the attacker. The attacker has a huge advantage. They'll usually nuke most of the opponent's shit before they can get it off
Obviously,
the
but they
ground.
don't. But why? How could you morally nuke any country knowing that an uncountable amount of people in your own country are going to die because you did that?
Because the war happens sooner or later, so better to start it on your terms and
But
win.
that's a
than wait for them
preemptive
to
attack.
start it.
You just start the war because
No. There's no such thing as a preemptive attack because war is inevitable. So, like, let's
No,
say
it's
you
not.
don't. Let's say you
War
don't
is
do.
a failure of
Let's
diplomacy.
let's say you don't do anything to counter communist China, for example. So for me, I don't advocate war with them. I want us to bankrupt them before it comes to that. But let's say we don't do that and we just let them build up their nukes until they have more than America and until they're ready to take over the world. Eventually, they're going to come into conflict with America. And if they launch the first strike, America loses most of her nukes before she can get them off the ground. But if America attacks right now when they've only got 300 and America has over 7,000, then America wins because America has about 20 times the nuclear firepower in America's work, and a lot of China's are outdated or not even operationally deployed. And so, what that means is that essentially, in this example, if a war broke out with China and America right now, would people die? Yes. Would America win? Yes, because America would destroy China and China would not be able to destroy America. You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of like
But
World War
you
II.
just
You
think
could say
China's
nobody
aiming
won World
for
War
America.
II.
They're not just aiming for America.
You could say nobody won World War II because 50 million people died, and that's a lot of people, except the Soviets and Americans won. So look at the world today. People,
Yeah, but there was no nukes then.
No, but
We're talking about nuclear war.
Yeah, and in most of the nuclear detonations, the radiation
And a conventional war is completely different.
Within 2 weeks, we're not talking like 50 megaton bombs everywhere. We're mostly talking about 400 kiloton devices, many of which are going to be
No, we're not. We're talking about intercontinental ballistic missiles.
with
Those are
400
huge.
kiloton devices. Like, what do you think is an average megatonnage of an American warhead right now in the nuclear arsenal? What do you think on the ICBMs? The Minuteman
I couldn't tell you.
You couldn't tell you. You probably think
no, I
it's
haven't researched nuclear missiles.
Okay, I'll tell you what
not
it is.
Like their specific tonnages, no.
Yeah, it's about 440 kilotons. That's nothing. The radiation clears out in about 2 weeks. If it's air bursted, it's only 1% of the radiation.
No, that's not nothing. You still killed millions of people.
No, I didn't say people didn't die. I'm saying that you're talking like it would be the end of the world, and I'm telling you within even 10 years.
It would effectively be the end of the world as we know it. Everything would be changed after a nuclear war.
By that logic, look, Hiroshima got nuked, so locally, shouldn't Hiroshima be?
Yes, and everything changed. They had their government,
and they're rich now. It
doesn't matter.
And they were fascists before, so you're objectively better off in Hiroshima today under American, what you would say is colonization or whatever. You are living under their fascist.
The nukes that were dropped on Japan with a strike, like a preemptive nuclear strike on another country. That's complete. We were at war with Japan. They expected.
No, but you're all that you're talking about are technicalities of like right to defense. That shit doesn't actually exist. What I'm telling you is that in the real world,
it doesn't. When you just set on world domination, it doesn't.
What I'm telling you is that in the real world, the world is anarchic, and like let's say it was the other way around. Like let's say like Hitler invaded the world and the world couldn't fight him off, and Hitler won. Then Hitler won. We'd all either be speaking German or not have survived today. Like what I'm telling you is that your international law is a myth. It's a meme. It's a social construct. We need to act in our interest
As are most
unilaterally.
things.
Otherwise, our opponents will act in their interest unilaterally, and we have to win, because if we give up and we do what you're saying and say, let them take over the world because it's not our business,
Venezuela is not taking over the world.
They will take no. But Russia is. They're invading places left and right, and guess what? They prop up that regime. They are a puppet state of Moscow. Maduro owes a lot to Russia. I mean, so the country that literally sends thermonuclear bombers over there and uploads the footage of them doing drills to YouTube on Russia Today. They're not Russia. No, they're a Russian puppet state. They're beholden to the Kremlin. They are, for all intents and purposes, you can think of them as an extension of the Russian Empire. So the people over there are getting absolutely, they're starving and everything, and you don't want to do anything because they haven't invaded anybody yet. That's so weak. So you could never make a case for humanitarian intervention then, unless
no, you can
get lucky. So what you're saying is that the Venezuelan people should hope that Maduro asks Putin to lend him some chemical weapons so he can use them.
Well, no, there's a way for the United States to do that intervention.
Then we'd be justified to intervene. So what you're saying is that the Venezuelan people should actually hope that he gasses a couple of them, so now they can finally be rid of the yoke of their oppressors.
I mean, no, I'm saying if we could get if you could get Congress to have a declaration of war.
My Congress.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, I care about the will of the people.
Congress. No, Congress is.
I don't want our government to just be allowed to go around with a bat hitting whoever they don't like.
No. Congress can focus on the economy and all that shit. The war should be in the domain of the commander in chief, as far as.
Yeah, well, that's not how the Constitution is written.
My Constitution, dude. Give me a break. You sound like Rand dumber than Jake Paul right now, dude.
Okay, fine.
Like, again, these are all just social constructs. At the end of the day, power is what forges the world. Social constructs.
Yes, I understand. That's how you think.
Well, yeah. I want to help 25 plus million people.
I honestly don't care what the United Nations has to say. I don't care, or that's what we would do.
Has to say. I literally don't give a shit about what your international law has to say, because guess what? Is it wrong to do a preemptive war? You might think so. Let's say I agree with you and say yes, it's a wrong. You know what's a bigger wrong? Letting 25 million people potentially starve. So you know what? I'll take doing a small wrong to prevent a huge wrong.
Yeah, well, the thing is, one of those wrongs is something that we could control as a country that I live in.
But you can control what happens in Venezuela. The U.S. is the most powerful superpower in the world. You don't think that if America decided to invade Venezuela, that Venezuela would be liberated? You really think Maduro would win against the U.S.? Because technically speaking, the U.S. could nuke him. Nobody's advocating for him to nuke him.
The United States would not nuke Venezuela.
I'm not saying they would, but I'm saying that technically.
Then why did you say it?
Because you acted like the U.S. would lose a war with Venezuela. You said you have no ability.
I did not say that.
No, you did. You said that the U.S. had no ability. The United States would obviously win a war. You said that the U.S. had no ability.
We have an overwhelming military.
You said that the U.S. had no ability to control what happened in Venezuela, and I'm telling you,
well, militarily we do. I'm saying legally we don't have the right.
Technically speaking, the U.S. could kill everybody in Venezuela right now with just carpet nukes. Technically,
yeah, well, that's great. That's not.
So when you say you have no power, when you say you have no power to do anything there, you're lying. The U.S. definitely has the ability to get rid of Maduro. You just don't want them to. You're a water boy for Maduro. So
I don't. I'm not a
water boy.
I'm not a water boy for Maduro. I don't believe our government has the right to do that.
Because why? Because of sovereignty. Because
I just fundamentally don't think
sovereignty, bro. Look, it's not the 1630s anymore. It's not just a bunch of different kings where if they go to war with each other, people.
You're right. We don't just have kings. We don't just have an autocracy. We have a whole government set up to listen to what everybody in the United States has to say. And guess what? If everybody in the United States decides we want to go do that with Venezuela, there's nothing I could do. But until that happens, I'm going to be against it.
You don't need everybody. Technically speaking, all you need
is you don't. Not anymore.
All you need is a good national security advisor to tell the president, hey, look, you should probably do something here, and for the president to agree. That's all you need. He's the commander-in-chief, or she is the commander-in-chief. It's as simple as that, because guess what? It's a democracy, but it's a representative democracy. You elect representatives. If those representatives decide to act on your behalf, it's their job. It's literally their job to advance the national interest. Most people, that's not their job. Most people's job is just to do
Did you get my PM, by the way?
regular stuff. What's that?
I was asking if you got my PM. Sorry, I was typing. I talked.
Oh, I got your PM. I don't know what time zone you're in. You're saying you've only got about 10 minutes left.
Yeah,
okay.
It was 1 here whenever I started.
Okay, fair enough. So I'm on the West Coast. We're almost.
Yeah, I remember. I thought it was going to be earlier. That was completely my fault.
Yeah, no, I just got off work fairly recently. Anyway, so I think what this is basically exposed is that you care more about what some documents say in the UN building than
not the UN. It's in the
then potentially
National
25 million people. Yeah, but it's still just random documents. It's still words on paper. Then 25
it's a living document, and it's what our government is based on.
People, then 25 million people potentially starving, and you have the capacity to intervene, but you will bear witness to it and say it is not my place because some document somewhere said it is your place to suffer and starve because your leader hasn't invaded anybody or gassed you yet. That is so
well, I would definitely come up with some other options before I would ever agree to the United States interfering.
Let's just keep it real. You got a Westphalia fetish. You're like Tinky Tulsi Gabbard. You guys masturbate to the Westphalia Treaty. That's what you guys do. Sovereignty, bro. Sovereignty, bro. That's what you guys get off on. It's lame. It's cringe. It's weak. It's duplicitous. It's relativist garbage. You don't actually care about humanity outside your own fucking borders, and that is so monumentally backward that I can guarantee you that with that attitude, if more people felt the way you did, you and your own borders will slip into fascism too. Because if democracy has no value anywhere else, why should it have any value here?
You already say it doesn't matter. I said it when I said I would support it if we had a democratic vote.
You've already given up on the universal validity of human rights, democracy, the pursuit of happiness, liberty, all that kind of stuff, because you choose sovereignty and you choose Westphalia and you choose.
I believe that sovereignty is a good way to protect those things, actually.
Oh, yeah, because Maduro's doing such a great job and Putin's doing such a great job and Kim's doing such a great job.
If you pick the worst example, sure.
Well, but
if let's say Germany, let's say that modern day Germany did a thing.
I literally just listed a few states that comprise hundreds of millions of people, and you say, oh, well, those are just a few examples. Let's not do anything there. That is so lame. You actually don't care about most people in the world. Like, you don't have empathy outside of your neighborhood.
Most people in the world don't live in Venezuela and Russia.
No. Well, I can go on. I can talk about China. I can talk about Vietnam. I can talk
a lot
about
of people
Iran.
do actually live in China.
I can talk about Laos. I can talk about any of these regimes. I can talk about Cuba. I can go on. I can talk about Nicaragua.
But China does have a much more competent government than Russia or Venezuela.
But you're okay. So you understand you're basically just bringing up red herrings and stuff that aren't exactly addressing the substance of the point that I just brought up. My point was that these are all countries.
I think they have sovereignty.
My point is that you said, oh, those are just a few countries. And then I listed you more countries that comprise about half of the world's population. And you say, oh, well, I guess one of their governments more. No, that's not the point. The point is
the point is I don't think it's our right to overthrow other foreign countries.
All of these countries have illegitimate governments. There are four conditions.
Because you decided. I can decide anything is illegitimate and don't invade it. That's my problem. I think we're way too.
There are conditions in which you forfeit your sovereignty, and specifically 4 of them. So one of them is you harbor terrorists. Another one of them is you. Another one of them is you try to get or use weapons of mass destruction in contravention of various agreements on that. The third is. Of course, you commit genocide, and the fourth is you wage, needless wars of aggression against your neighbors. So, in the case of Venezuela, for example, you can basically count that. Now, that's the Hitchens doctrine. My doctrine is a little more extensive than that, but that's a rough starting point for a more moral focus as opposed to a legal focused understanding of how a state loses its sovereignty. So Saddam violated all 4 of them, for example. Is Maduro trying to get nukes or chemical weapons? No, but does that mean that we should keep him in power? I mean, that would be crazy to keep him in power.
But that's the thing. I don't think that's us keeping him in power. Just because
you have the capacity to intervene. You have the capacity to intervene. You have the capacity to do something. We're not talking about.
I have the capacity to intervene in a lot of things.
We're talking about America. America can actually do something. Not like some tiny country in the middle of nowhere. America's the world superpower. America could do something. You've admitted that America could do something if America wanted to, and yet you're saying stand by,
Yes,
bear
we could
witness,
send a
and do
missile
nothing.
over or do anything. I mean, sure,
No, I don't
we're
want
the
a
most
missile
powerful
over. I
country
want
in the
boots on the
earth.
ground to get rid of Maduro. So
I disagree with
missiles
that.
are pretty indiscriminate, generally speaking. Troops are less indiscriminate.
Yeah, but
when you get
unfortunately,
their
that's
gun.
what ends up getting used a lot of the time.
Because there's a lot of anti-war people that don't want boots on the ground, so America has to do drone strikes and all kinds of other bullshit. So
I wonder
people
why
like
don't
you,
people want boots on the ground?
because of Russian propaganda, all kinds
No,
of
because
bullshit.
they
The
never
anti-war,
leave.
yeah, and you just admitted that them never leaving means that they'll look based and rich like Japan and Germany. So great, never
I
leave.
want them to leave.
Yeah, because you don't care. Because you don't care about the people in Venezuela. You only care about fucking John Redneck down the road from you. Basically, that's all you care about. That's fucking bullshit, dude. That's depraved. You don't actually care about the vast majority of humanity, and that's lame. It's just lame. I don't know what else to say. Like, it's silly. The
Again,
international.
you've said that 100 times, and I
Yeah, but
just
it's
disagree
still
with you
true,
on
and
it.
it's just as true on the
It's not
10,000
true.
times, 100. No, it is lame. It is lame, dude. Everything that you've listed here tonight is lame and cringe. So it's lame.
It's not.
Anyway, you get your time to make your. I know you gotta get going. You get your time to make your closing statements. So.
Oh well, fantastic. Okay, well, I disagree with you on a lot of that things. I agree with you on the sanctions. I think we did actually agree a lot on that. I'd be interested to hear more about what you actually had to say on that subject. I think we talked a lot about Venezuela. It wasn't something I did do a lot of research on for this. I did do a lot of. Maybe shouldn't have brought it up, honestly, but I'm pretty confident with my beliefs on the subject. I don't believe it's our right to go in and overthrow just any government that does a bad thing. I think you could make an argument that any government, I think from coming from anywhere, you could say any government is bad. And I think you could use that to justify overthrowing any kind of government. So that's just where I'm coming from. I don't necessarily think you're wrong in thinking that we should interfere in some other countries like Syria or that. But yeah, as far as that goes, yeah, that's my closing statement.
Okay. Yeah, so I think tonight I've done a pretty decent job of exposing the moral duplicity of anti-interventionists and Westphalians at large. That the idea that, well, sovereignty is the divine right of kings and sacrosanct, and we can't violate anybody else's sovereignty unless they like do an invasion or anything. Basically, what Kaiser's foreign policy doctrine has been illustrated tonight is such that if you are an oppressed and starving or butchered person somewhere in the world, the only hope for you that you could ever rely on America to come to your aid would be if your dictator were so foolish as to use a chemical weapon to kill a couple random people. Then America is now given the magic words to go and help you. But before that, there's a force field and America can't do anything.
The magic words are from Congress, actually.
That's
the magic
you could
words
say
I
Congress,
believe in.
you could say international law, any of that kind of bullshit.
No, because that's the thing. You have to if you can make this. If you're making this argument, and I agree, and you're saying that this is bad that it's happening in another country, make that argument to the people, make that to the legislators. Then we can decide to go do that as a country. I don't believe in the whole just the president gets to decide what we do militarily. I don't believe in that. I think it was wrong of us to give him the power to do that originally, and I think he shouldn't have it.
So it's funny. I bring up the whole thing about the Constitution, all that kind of stuff. The funny thing about this is the Constitution actually, it is constitutional. The president has the authorization for the use of military force up to 2 months.
No,
which by the way,
up to 2 months.
Up to 2 months would be more than enough time to get rid of Maduro. That would be a fast process. It wouldn't take that long.
I don't think
we are veering off from closing statements, but my point here
we are. I'm sorry.
This idea that we have to act like there's some huge force field around every state out there because they're magic states and we can't do anything, even if they do horrible stuff. But if they invade somebody, if the people on the ground there are getting slaughtered, if they're lucky enough that their dictator decides to invade somebody, then maybe we can save them. Or if they're lucky enough that their dictator decides to gas some of them, then we can save them. But if their dictator's smart enough not to invade anybody else or gas anybody, then they can go on for decades, continually living in terror and oppression. And
yeah, you already said that, and I said I disagreed.
Well, this is the closing statement, right? That's how the debate works, is that we recap. It's kind of like when you do an essay and your concluding paragraph is basically, you don't have any new information in your concluding paragraph. right? Unless you like flunked out of English, which giving your arguments here tonight, maybe you did. Maybe you're not that bright. So anyway, I think I made my
No,
case
go
here
ahead.
tonight. So anti-interventionism is morally depraved, and tonight we have
Morally
seen
depraved.
the absolute lameness of the international law bros and the liberal internationalists at large. So I rest my case there. Thank you for watching, everybody. If you have an issue with me, you want to debate me, DM me on Twitter like Kaiser did at Kevin Castling. You can set up a debate with me as well. So I'm doing the post show in 5 minutes or so. So be sure to tune into that. It'll be interesting. And with that, take care and have a good night, everybody. Stay based.